The fake out is coming. Don't be caught as exit liquidity. Great YouTube clickbait title for today. And of course, we're going to be going over the more sort of medium term for Bitcoin, talking about the next 5 to 10 days, which I suspect are going to get a little bit more complicated before things do get easier. If you want the 5-second analysis from this video, we always like to upfront these things. So the 5-second analysis would be, as long as Bitcoin is below the last lower high here at just under 93,000 bucks on a trading basis, or on a closing basis, it would be about 90,700. I do still look at Bitcoin as a little bit in a short-term predicament. Long-term, still good. Long term, still think that the lows are in, but short term, I do think that we can get a decent pullback back down to the low 80s. Anyways, before we get into the actual content of the day, I do want to let you know that you can still get all of the programs and services for 20% off with the code YEAR7, year in all capitals, and then the number 7. And that will apply to any of the programs or services that you see in the Teachable School. And then of course, and that's actually running for the next couple days, basically until the end of this month. And then of course, you can actually try out many of our services like the Quant Prime AI, the Caretaker's full indicator bundle, and then of course the VMP and even the quantum wave bands for free for the first 30 days with the code TRIAL in all capitals. All right, so I want to bring you over here to start this one off with a look across YouTube, and we can see that on YouTube, things are definitely seeming one direction as of right now. I see all sorts of Bitcoin's about to explode, bull run is about to be confirmed, 1 million Bitcoin. I mean, all of these things, maybe they happen over a long enough period of time. And like I said, overall, I do think that the lows are in. Overall, I do think that Bitcoin, is more long-term bullish, but cruising across, who's this guy? I like this guy's vibe. That's funny. That's real funny. Anyways, my point is that, it's very, very clear here that just about every title that we see under the keyword Bitcoin is bullish as fuck. And I suspect that that does offer up the opportunity for a bit of a fake out in the short term alongside other things as well. So let me get my notes back on over here. Let's go to the actual charts. And again, the most important area to be aware of for Bitcoin is, of course, the last lower high that we saw from the 6th of March, as long as Bitcoin's below there on just even a wick basis at 92,833. Still have to be aware that this is, technically a downtrend, and another return close to or at the lows is certainly possible. So that condition could be nullified if Bitcoin were to just simply trade above that level, or if it could close above the closing price for that region, which is about 90,000, let's just call it 90,700 on a daily time frame. You start to see closures above there, okay, or a wick above here, then I'd say, hey, Bitcoin it's not fucking coming back down. And any sort of short-term downside move is going to be an opportunity to just kind of get in on this nice little trend. But as it stands right now, again, just reiterating what we have been looking at for the past week and a half now, which is as long as Bitcoin's below this region here, actually it's really the last 3 weeks, I guess now, as long as Bitcoin's below this area here, it is still more likely to come back. There's other reasons as well. Let's actually go into it, and then we'll go into a specific pivot that would confirm the short-term pullback is underway. In fact, we can do that, or we can start off with that. The short-term pivot for Bitcoin actually confirming a local high, thus likely coming back down to the lower 80s, would be if Bitcoin trades below yesterday's low. Even just a tick below yesterday's low likely does it for me, which is 85,900. Of course, a closure below yesterday's lower, basically anywhere below 86,000 bucks would certainly do it for me as well. And at that point, have to be looking for a move somewhere between 82 to 84,000 bucks. These ranges are tight here, and like I said, it is going to get a little bit complicated because I don't want to. I certainly personally do not want to be getting like super bearish off of this. But can Bitcoin play out like a 5, maybe even 10% downside move? Sure. Ultimately, it's an opportunity, but on the topic of likely pullback here, I did want to also highlight that we're seeing our sort of slightly higher term time frame momentum oscillators turn down here. Here's a 12-hour stochastic momentum oscillator. This one's turning down with downside pressure as long as Bitcoin's below 88,125. Not super far away from where current price action is, but does deserve some consideration. And the daily time frame also getting into the critical zone here, which will turn down if Bitcoin closes below 86,250. So you could actually add that onto the short-term pivot list as, if Bitcoin closed below 80, what was it? 86,250, then yes, that would also confirm this as very, very likely the next local and lower high, getting ready for another downside swing. On top of that, when we go over to our RSI oscillator, we can see that 12-hour and daily time frame are going to be having chances here to put in hidden bearish divergence still, because the 12-hour RSI has made higher highs than basically all of the highs going back to February, which is very interesting to me. And again, that is going to be confirmed if Bitcoin basically comes back down below 86 and closes there, especially on CME. So you'd have multiple things. So it's not like an actionable thing just yet, at least in my opinion, but it's getting close. And the longer that Bitcoin kind of stalls here, the more and more that it does seem to me that there's maybe one more swing down, probably quick, probably relatively painless, and then I'd be looking for the actual reversal. We'll get into that a little bit later, but still, while we're on topic here, I do want to go over to traditional markets, because traditional markets are also playing out their own pullback after essentially the same bounce that we've seen on crypto, on Bitcoin, basically. Had a big bounce off of the 377 right here, that blue moving average, rejected around the white 200 moving average, coming back down very, very likely. But similar to Bitcoin, I do suspect that it probably puts in a low somewhere in here. It doesn't need to be all the way at the bottom, but somewhere in that vicinity is fair game. Does that influence Bitcoin? Well, as we know, Bitcoin is not correlated to traditional markets on the upside, but it is heavily correlated to traditional markets on the downside, for better or worse. In most cases, for the worse, to be honest. But yeah, on top of this, we see that the tether dominance chart, while it has confirmed a local and lower high right here, it is in a bounce position for the short term. Can this bounce back up north of 5.25%? Sure. I mean, again, that's not going to like destroy fucking Bitcoin, but it would be good enough for a bit of a short-term pullback. Overall, though, I still remain with my general analysis on this. The trend is to the downside. Just put in another lower high. This one's generally coming lower. Again, another reason why I'm just not full-on bearish, at least not as of now. This can always change in the future, of course. One of the big reasons why I refuse to change, or actually, sorry, one last thing before we get into one of the reasons why I refuse to change. Terrible last words, but daily HPDR bands here, you can see the tops out of the range, 88,700. Bitcoin, continues to fail, get back above there, indicating that this is still a corrective move, as long as it kind of remains within the bounds of this 38.2 level. So, if Bitcoin, if Bitcoin came back down below yesterday's low, I think you're very likely going to see at some point, a move to the bottom end of the 38.2 level. Right now, that's at 82,350. So that would be an area of interest, I suppose. Again, if Bitcoin does take out yesterday's low. And of course, this one will update with each and every daily closure. So maybe that moves up a little bit, maybe it moves down a little bit, but it should be a good guide as to where to be expecting the next sort of bounce attempt. Anyways, moving on from there, I do want to reiterate, as we have been for a long time now, that I do think that this is all ultimately an opportunity, and maybe Bitcoin potentially even coming down 5 to 10% is like not relevant to you at all. If you're very, very long term minded, I would imagine it's probably not. So with that consideration in mind, I do still want to point out here that the hash ribbons indicator did fire off a buy signal. It's not just confirmed on the daily time frame; it's also confirmed on the 5-day time frame, which just closed last night, by the way. And so all of these things, both of these things combined together have been an incredibly strong signal in the past that has indicated that whatever the last major low was before that signal was printed was the low before never going lower ever again. Now, that has only been violated 3 times in the history of this of Bitcoin's lifespan. And there have been 18 total iterations on the 5-day and a little bit more on the daily. And both of those have the same stats, essentially. The 5-day, as I ridden out right here, is 15 out of 18. So again, when I say that, we wouldn't be expecting closures below the low, which is 76,700. We could get a move down around there. Theoretically, we could even get a wick lower, but just no closures below. I'll give you a couple of examples to hammer this one in. Let's go back to, this is a beautiful one right here. So this was the hash ribbons buy signal from July of 2024. You can see the last major low before this signal was right here in this red circle. That red circle, if we draw a horizontal line exactly from the low there, you can see Bitcoin tests into it a couple more times, even getting a nice wick below right here, of course, but does not have any closures below. There's no closures below. So that is the key ingredient with this. And does make me, aware that, hey, I guess it could come all the way back down there. It's just we don't want to see closures back down below there. But again, if you're more long-term minded, here's a stat that you might be interested in. For the hash ribbons indicator, or the price action that typically happens after the hash ribbons indicator fires off a blue buy signal typically takes somewhere between 60 to 90 days to reach decently new highs typically. In fact, we found that if we measure the move before the first major correction for Bitcoin, on average, it's actually returned about 62%. Now, we actually saw this happen obviously recently. The one most recently was in July of 2024. Bitcoin moves up from there to the next major high, 64%, like literally right on the dot. It does take a little bit longer. That was that signal definitely did take longer. But going over here, same thing. August of 2023 fires off right here. If we take it from there to the next major high, another 64% move. Same thing over here. Bitcoin trades up, fires off the blue buy signal over the next 90 days, almost a 50% move. We have another one over here. This one, another 64% move. Why do we keep on seeing 64% pop up? That's a weird number. It just keeps on popping up. Just an observation. That's all. Same thing over here. Same thing over here. You get the idea. So, on the lower end, we have seen about like a 25 to 30% move. And on the upper end, we've seen several 100% moves, obviously, but the average still coming in around about a little over 62%. So, just putting that into perspective, I'm curious what that would kind of look like if we fast forward 60 to 90 days out from now. Well, if we were to go for the lower end of maybe like 25%, that would put Bitcoin basically on the exact same high at 109,500 or so. If Bitcoin were to go up to, let's say, 40%, still below the average by good amount, that would be $122,000, kind of around the time of the start of the summer. And then, if it does go for 50%, that's 130. If it goes for 60%, which is again around the average, that's 140. So, these numbers have been coming up from multiple different angles. If you've been watching these videos in the past with, the long-term projections for Bitcoin during this cycle. So, I do want to kind of pull out and recognize that, hey, in general, probably going to be trading higher in the next, let's say, 60 to 90 days, decently higher. Maybe it doesn't reach the full extent of the move, of course, but, should be in trending motion. I'm going to try to find an example here of like the worst iteration and what that looked like in terms of the initial move up. And okay, actually, it's going to be this one right here. Yeah, it's going to be this one right here from right before the Rona dump. You can see that this blue buy signal fired off. Bitcoin did actually trade up 53% from that signal, like literally 53% from that fucking signal before, of course, violating the condition, which was, don't want to take out that last prior trending low, which in this case it did. But again, even though this one failed miserably, it did produce a 53% move. Even more recently in 2021, we saw the same thing fire off right here on this rally. Bitcoin goes on to rally up another 64% from the signal. Yes, it does fail later on, but a 50, 60% move is always going to be a 50 to 60% move. So even in the event of failure, we have seen some pretty decent rallies from these regions over the next, let's say, 2 to 4 months, two to 4 month span. So again, if you're more long-term, I don't know if a short-term move like this, which isn't even confirmed as of right now, matters for you at all. That's a decision for you to be making for yourself. But of course, if you are, if you're highly leveraged or on the short-term timeframes right now, then perhaps that is a concern, So I think that's where I'll leave off on this video. In fact, actually, let's end this on, let's actually check in on the quantum wave bands here. It's taken a few more trades since we last spoke about it. Looks like the one less recently was a little bit of a loss right here, then followed by another small gain. So small loss, small gain, and then it actually entered into another trade right here. If I was looking at this, I'd be saying, hey, we just entered at low 86. Maybe let's take profit right now. But we'll see what happens. As always, you can test out the quantum wave bounds for 30 days for 100% free with the code trial in all capitals, just as you see. Oops, maybe in all capitals would be good. Just as you see right there. Again, this is completely just for anyone to use, any new user to try it out and see if it's relevant to you or not, and just see how it works in real time. It is a scalping strategy. I understand that some people not interested in scalping strategies are more interested in trend trading strategies. That's all good, but this would not be a good fit. So I think, as always, it's best to let people make the decision for themselves. So that's why we've been offering up these 30-day 30-day trials with all of our indicator packages. So yeah, that's where I'll end it for today's video. Again, a long way of saying, as long as Bitcoin is still below that March 6th high, there's still a realistic threat of a short-term downside move. I don't think Bitcoin is likely to make new lows. I do think it can come down close to the lows, probably a higher low, and then that's likely the last major opportunity, assuming that all of this plays out. So on that note, signing off. As always, I want to wish you the best. Take care, much love, and we'll be back with another live stream tomorrow, which I'm actually very excited for. So see you hopefully there.